April 1945. The war in Europe is almost over. Germany is crumbling from every direction. Soviet forces are closing in from the east. American and British armies are pushing from the west. The Third Reich, which Hitler promised would last 1,000 years, is dying in real time. And somewhere in the chaos of a collapsing empire, a group of SS officers make a decision that will define one of the most extraordinary moments of the entire war. They decide to complain. They send a formal request to the nearest American command. They are prisoners of war, they say, and their treatment, their food, their quarters, their conditions is simply not good enough. They demand better. To understand what happened next, you need to understand George S. Patton. He was, by almost any measure, the most aggressive, most dramatic, and most complicated general the United States produced in the Second World War. He believed in reincarnation. He believed he had fought in ancient battles in previous lives. He talked to God. He cursed at subordinates. He wept over the graves of soldiers and drove his men to the edge of human endurance. He was brilliant. He was brutal. And he had absolutely no patience for what he considered weakness in his enemies, in his allies, or in himself. By April 1945, Patton's Third Army had cut through France, Luxembourg, Belgium, and deep into Germany at a speed that stunned even his own commanders. His army moved faster than supply lines could keep up. His tanks outran their fuel. His men fought on nearly no sleep. Patton pushed them because he understood something that few commanders did. Speed was mercy. The faster the war ended, the fewer people died. Every day the war continued was another day of horror for the people of Europe. Patton had seen what this war truly was. He had liberated towns. He had walked through the aftermath of massacres. He had stood in places where things had been done to human beings that no person should ever have to witness. He knew exactly who the SS were, not just soldiers following orders. The Schutzstaffel, the SS, were the ideological core of the Nazi state, the men who ran the concentration camps, the men who carried out the mass executions, the men who enforced Hitler's will with a brutality that shocked even hardened military veterans. And now, some of them were his prisoners, demanding better treatment. The world needs to understand exactly who was making this request. The SS was not the regular German army. The Wehrmacht, the standard German military, had its own crimes, its own failures, its own dark chapters. But the SS was something different. Founded in 1925 as Hitler's personal bodyguard, it grew into the most powerful and most feared organization in Nazi Germany. By the war years, the SS controlled the concentration camps. The SS carried out the Einsatzgruppen, the mobile killing squads that followed the German army into the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, shooting entire communities into mass graves. The SS administered the machinery of the Holocaust. These were not conscripted men who had no choice but to serve. SS membership was largely voluntary. Members swore personal loyalty to Adolf Hitler himself, not to Germany, not to the army, to Hitler. They were selected for ideological commitment. They believed in what they were doing. By the end of the war, the SS had been responsible for the deaths of millions of people: Jewish families, Soviet prisoners of war, Polish civilians, Roma people, political prisoners, disabled people. Anyone the Nazi state had decided did not deserve to live. And now, in the spring of 1945, with their empire in ruins around them, some of those men sat in an American prisoner of war camp and sent a formal complaint about the quality of their conditions. The complaint, by various historical accounts, referenced their status as officers. It cited the Geneva Convention. It demanded food more suitable to their rank, better sleeping arrangements, more respectful treatment from the guards. Accounts of what happened next come from multiple sources. officers who served with Patton, historical records of the Third Army's movements, and the documented events at the liberated camps Patton encountered in those final weeks of the war. What is known and what is documented is this: Patton did not respond with bureaucratic process. He did not file the complaint. He did not refer it to a superior. He decided to give the SS officers exactly what they asked for: better treatment. His version of it: Patton ordered the SS officers to be taken somewhere, not to a better facility, not to upgraded quarters, to one of the places their organization had built, a concentration camp. In the final weeks of the war, as American forces swept through Germany, they encountered camp after camp: Ohrdruf, Buchenwald, Dachau. Places that had existed in rumor and intelligence reports, but nothing had prepared the soldiers for what they actually found inside. On April 4, 1945, Patton's Third Army liberated Ohrdruf. It was a subcamp of Buchenwald, one of the smaller camps. Nothing could have been small enough to prepare them for it. The soldiers who entered first stopped walking almost immediately. What they found inside defied every frame of reference they had for human experience: mass graves, stacked bodies, evidence of executions carried out just days before, as the SS had attempted to eliminate witnesses before the Americans arrived. The survivors who remained, hollow-eyed, skeletal, some of them too weak to stand, watched the American soldiers from behind wire fences. Patton visited Ohrdruf personally. He was a man who had seen combat across 2 world wars, a man who had ordered men into artillery fire and watched them die, a man who prided himself on his iron control. At Ohrdruf, Patton was sick. Physically sick. He had to step outside. He later wrote about what he saw there with a rawness that was completely unlike his usual commanding tone. He forced the mayor and citizens of the nearby German town of Gotha to walk through the camp, to see with their own eyes what had been done in their name, in their country. Just miles from their homes, the mayor and his wife returned home that night and took their own lives. Patton also arranged for press photographers and journalists to document everything. He sent word to Eisenhower. He sent word to Washington. He said, in words that cut through every layer of military formality, that people needed to see this. That if the world did not see this with its own eyes, it would forget. And if it forgot, it would happen again. And so, when the SS officers in Patton's custody demanded better treatment, Patton showed them. He had them brought to see what better treatment looked like to the people their organization had imprisoned: the skeletal figures in the camps, the mass graves, the evidence of what the SS had considered acceptable treatment for millions of human beings. There is something almost cinematic about the justice of that moment. Men who had worn the insignia of absolute power, who had decided the fates of millions with paperwork and ideology, standing in the ruins of what they had built, being shown the direct result of the system they had served. No firing squad, no dramatic confrontation, just the truth, laid out in front of them, undeniable, unavoidable. Patton was not a simple man. History does not get to make him simple. He held views that were deeply problematic. His treatment of soldiers who showed trauma, the infamous slapping incidents, revealed a blindness to human suffering that existed alongside his genuine grief for the men he lost. He was complicated, contradictory, sometimes wrong. But in the spring of 1945, standing in the ruins of Nazi Germany, faced with men who had operated the worst system of organized murder in human history, Patton understood something clearly. Some requests do not deserve a respectful reply. Some people, given the full picture of their actions, can only be answered with the truth. The war in Europe ended on May 8, 1945. Less than 5 weeks after Patton's army walked through Ohrdruf, the SS officers who demanded better treatment were processed through the military justice system. Many faced war crimes tribunals at Nuremberg. Many were convicted. Many were executed. Their complaints about food and sleeping arrangements did not feature prominently in the proceedings. Patton himself died in December 1945, just months after the war ended, from injuries sustained in a car accident in Germany. He never made it home. The general who had fought harder and faster than almost any commander in the war died quietly in a hospital bed in Heidelberg. But the moment stands, not because it was dramatic, not because it makes a clean moral story. It stands because of what it says about accountability, about the gap between how people see themselves and what they have actually done. The SS officers in that camp saw themselves as soldiers, as officers, as men deserving of respect under the rules of war. What Patton showed them was the world they had actually created,